Welcome, everyone, to the Cheese Room Podcast Monday YouTube show. I'm your host, Jack Hoyle, and I'm joined by an esteemed panel today, as you can see. But first, I think we should take a moment of silence and reflect on this weekend's events. While we are all glad for the 3 points on Saturday, I feel this insidious global conspiracy against poor Liverpool Football Club must stop. I don't understand how it's possible that every single decision goes against them. I'm sure my panelists all have very, very heavy hearts, but the show must go on and we will endeavor to entertain and inform you over the next hour or so. And with that, I want to turn to my wonderful guest, Becky. Becky, how you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for having me on, Jack. Yeah, lots to talk about, but yeah, it's just mayhem. I still reading things today, and it's just this sort of continual sort of outpouring. But yeah, we'll get into it. Looking forward to it.
And I will tell you, that's one of the real pleasures, or not pleasures, wrong word, benefits of living here in the States. And for my schedule, I've been at work all day, and everyone around me has no idea. For the most part, there's one Liverpool fan on the second floor. I haven't seen him, but other than that, no one has any idea about anything. I don't have to read. I don't have to hear. I don't have to see. I can ignore all of the chaos. And if I open my phone up, I was like, okay, I'm putting that back down. So because I don't, I don't want to hear it.
Regulars to the channel will know that I live in Chester, and that's 20 miles from Liverpool. My husband's a Liverpool supporter. I went to school today, and there were Liverpool fans everywhere. I've seen them yesterday, and so there's a lot of people that have kind of mentioned it or had, and I've been very good. I've let them have their rant, but yeah, I've had a few comebacks at them as well.
Good for you. Isaiah, you're joining us also from America, not too far from where I am sitting right now. Hope you're doing well. How's it going today?
Pretty good. I have quite a lot to say about the Liverpool complaints. So looking forward to getting into it.
All right, excellent. Well, I think it would be good to start the show with this. I think this is a really good sentiment from our friends in the north part, and I think this is an excellent idea. And I'm going to, let everyone digest that because I think it's a great idea. Black Art Man, September 30th. Poor Liverpool. All right. As usual, we got a lot to talk about, but I think it's always good to start with the less controversial and kind of warm ourselves up a little bit and just discuss the lineup. I want to turn to you, Becky. We saw Richarlison came in, but he played on the left. Is that surprising to you? Was that something that you were looking for, or were you done something different?
Well, we heard, didn't we, on Friday that it's very likely that Johnson wasn't going to play and that whatever he had tweaked in the Arsenal game, whether it was hamstring or it was tightness, had kind of kept him out. Ange said that in the press conference. And then they were saying that Son and Maddison had trained late in the week. When the lineups came up, being a 5:30 kickoff, me and Jack set off a little bit later, but the traffic was bad because it was a train strike. So we got into London for about 2-ish, so went to the pub, met friends, and then when the lineups came out, it was like, oh, Richarlison's playing. Oh, does that mean he's playing up top and Son's playing on the left-hand side, which is how I kind of thought that would be. And that obviously didn't turn out to be the case. Son played up front, Richarlison played on the left-hand side. But for me, it was things like Dyer's not in the lineup again, in the squad, sorry, because there'd been a game, hadn't there, where Phillips wasn't and Dyer was back in, and that swapped back again. We had Jamie Donnelly on the bench, and interestingly, watching it back on Sunday on Match of the Day, they used that as a way of sort of saying, the Spurs squad is quite light still, but I saw it as we're bringing the youngsters in and getting them involved in the squad, so I saw it as kind of like a positive thing, particularly as Valise came on, didn't he, towards the end of the game? So it was interesting to see how it actually turned out. But we've talked about this before about how we've got players that possibly could play in numerous positions or can switch positions, and we saw that later on in the game itself when Son went off and Richarlison did go up front. So, but yeah, certainly I thought that's what would happen before kickoff, but that's not how it turned out.
Yeah, and I did hear, or maybe I read that reportedly Dyer was sick. Did you hear that or read that anywhere?
Okay, no, I didn't.
I don't know if that's true or that's just cover being sent out by the club to try and make Dyer situation not seem so dire. Isaiah, your thoughts on the lineup? I know I got a text from you. See, I'll say, for disclosure, I did not see the first half live. I was coming from my own game, and I got a text from you on the way that said you'd never been so afraid to open up a lineup before. So what were your thoughts when you saw it?
Well, I mean, I didn't even notice Richarlison was in the lineup because I was just so happy to see Maddison and Son both in it. Yeah, the game actually started and he got the ball and I was like, oh, I didn't realize he was on the pitch, because I just opened it up to see that those two were playing, and I just big sigh of relief. I didn't notice anything else. I didn't notice that Phillips was on the bench ahead of Dyer. I didn't know that Belize was on the bench till I got a shot of him, going through some of his, warm up routines. Yeah. So my thoughts on the lineup were basically, oh, thank God they're both playing, and then I didn't pay attention to anything.
And so, was anything? Once you figured it out who was playing, did you feel that was the right decision to not play Solomon over Richarlison, or how did you feel about it when you kind of digested it?
Well, I'm not sure. My initial reaction was surely Richarlison's not on the left, and this is just some odd moment. Like they've set up this way, and he's going to go over to the right, or he's going to go up the middle, whichever. But no, I thought he played pretty well on the left, and yeah, I mean, I might have said that Solomon made more sense because he's just got more pace to get behind the defense. It's not the quickest center back pairing. It's not the quickest back line. But I think his physicality and energy worked really well. So, credit to Ange for that decision.
Yeah, and I think you always want to give a Evertonian a shot at Liverpool, right? I mean, this is two games where he's got a goal and an assist. So, I mean, it might be something to think about there. So, Beg, you were, unlike us, of course, who were not in London and certainly not at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and you were. Talk to me a little bit about the atmosphere when you were able to get in the ground.
Yeah, so I sort of said off air that we've been told now that the trumpet will be there every game, and there was lots of kind of people saying all week, we need to bring the atmosphere. We need to really kind of, I put on Facebook, I think before me and Jack left, I think that obviously Arsenal away is not easy, but I said I felt this was our toughest test this season at home so far. Obviously I've got a lot of friends in Liverpool, so I kind of tagged something along the lines of, will we still be smiling at 7:30 or something like that? So there was lots of talk about we needed to kind of play our part and the atmosphere needed to be there. And as I was just saying, it's the third game of having the trumpet. So in the Man United game, they played the trumpet almost kind of as they came out onto the pitch. At Sheffield United, because of the minute silence, they played it earlier and a lot of people weren't in their seats. And for Liverpool, they literally played it after the Premier League music. So when they're all sort of standing and then they go and take their zippy tops off and go and get into position, they played the trumpet then. And it was like goosebumps singing along to that. And then the referee was almost kind of like waiting to blow the whistle for it to end. So it was like Jack said to me, he goes, oh, that was like Never Walk Alone when they play it right before kickoff. So I know they're experimenting with when it's played, but I thought that was the ideal time. Everybody's kind of in position, everybody joins in. It really kind of, got everybody going. And I've got on my notes here, the first thing I've written here is both teams started with a really high tempo, which is what we expected. So to start with such a good atmosphere and kind of, build from there, I think the trumpet has made such a difference this year. I know we had the drum again. We had a standing drum person because so we had a different person, but again, I think the trumpet has really, really helped this year.
And have you talked to people around in your section? Does everyone feel that it's a good addition for helping getting the crowd going? And
yeah, definitely. And then with the drums, obviously the drum is right at the back. I'm in 250 and the drum is 324, so it's quite a way back from me. And some of the songs make it down to us, some don't. You can hear my voice is still really croaky. But yeah, I can remember doing a Mickey van der Ven song around us that kind of built to the rest of the South Stand. There were sort of songs that sort of start and then they kind of cascade. Obviously, Ange Postecoglou one. There were Richarlison ones I could hear from further back. It is all kind of, we keep saying they're playing really well, but I do think the atmosphere really massively helps, and it keeps kind of, the players keep saying it does really sort of help them right to the final whistle, whatever minute of the game that might be.
I hope to get over. I don't think I'm going to be able to get over for anything until probably the spring at the earliest. But I definitely don't want to let the season go by without getting a game. The two of us need to. Isaiah and I need to coordinate a little bit and think about how we get over and go visit. And get a game in. So we got to start looking at that, because it comes through the television. I mean, the difference between this season and last season, the amount of time where like, again, my wife watches a lot of times with us, and she's like, she can hear the thud of the ball clearly, and there's just it's like it's a library sometimes last season. We all know why. And this year, so few times is that just dead silence coming through the game when we're watching. So that's really, really great. I'm glad to hear it. And so the game kicks off. So we've got 25 minutes of 11v11. Isaiah, how are you feeling with the first 25 minutes? How do you think it played out? What were your thoughts on as you were watching? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, I felt, as we have been for a lot of the starts to games this season, just taking a little bit of time to sort of get into that rhythm, building out of the back, and that's kind of par for the course at this point in a project, in building a team around a system. Obviously it's couldn't be more different from the systems the guys who've been here for a few years have been playing. A lot of the players who haven't been here and actually playing for the team, a lot of them were in very different systems as well. I mean, think about Udogie. The way we play now couldn't be more different to the way he was playing in Italy. So those things are going to happen. We're going to be slow. It's not until we've had more time in this system. It's not just going to click from the whistle. And so, I was just sort of watching it like, I really hope we can sort of, stay in the game early, don't concede a goal, and sort of build that rhythm and get into the games, get into our flow. Obviously, they were pressing aggressively, as they're always going to do under Klopp, and we pressed as well. And I thought really our press is what impressed me most early on, because there were multiple moments where it was just inches away from a really dangerous turnover created by our press. And I felt like while the same could be said for Liverpool's press, I felt like we navigated those situations well. And I feel like a lot of their situations where they kind of got out of it were sort of last ditch, a bit fortunate. The ball bounces out for a throw in as opposed to into the path of an attacking player. And so I was happy with that, with our start from that perspective of knowing that, this is still a new system that we're playing. This is still new to all of these players. So yeah, I thought we were doing well up until the point of the red card, which obviously changed the game.
And Becky, what were your thoughts on the first 25 minutes there?
Yeah, I agree. They were always going to kind of come at us. That we knew that was exactly how it was going to be. I think, there was some really nice kind of interplay. Everything seemed to kind of go through Maddison. So anything that we did create kind of was from him, either to Richarlison or him to Kulusevski. I said at the top of the show there, Richarlison was playing on the left-hand side. He did some really nice kind of outside of the foot kind of crosses. There was that one that Kulusevski couldn't get on the end of. But yeah, they had that chance where Gakpo made that double save, and someone tweeted me yesterday, well, they were straight at him, he should have saved them. But we've talked every game so far where we have been under the cosh and he's made saves, and we've kind of built on from that. And that was another experience of that. That if you've seen it on Twitter, the photo that Christina Zandes has taken from behind the goal when the own goal goes in, and he's sitting in his hands like this on the grass, it's like an amazing goal. Vicario, I think his kind of passion and how the communication between the back four and the kind of, someone's put in the chat about the team spirit, that I think really starts from the back. And although I'm not saying Luis never brought that team spirit, Vicario is so much more animated and so much, obviously for the first half when you're in the south stand, you're watching Vicario and you just sort of, the way he's so involved so early in his Spurs career is just really kind of, and I saw so many people in Vicario tops on Saturday, from little kids, my friend Shirley was wearing hers, Jack was wearing his. There's just loads of people who are kind of really kind of, taken into their hearts really quickly. Van de Ven, I thought was amazing. Watching the highlights back yesterday, when he was kind of chasing down Gakpo and Salah and these players that in the past Dyer hasn't been able to keep up with, even if we don't go into the mistakes of the last game when they beat us and Dyer made that mistake, Van de Ven he's just everywhere. And that kind of builds that momentum, and people put in the chat about the team, and that kind of builds. And then you've got Udogie breaking down, attacking, kind of counter-attacking, and then you've got Bissouma. The reason why Bissouma got fouled is because he's there trying to get the ball back, and that kind of continual kind of press. You saying about come on to the controversial things. I from where we were for the Bissouma one, the Curtis Jones one, is that I always say, you look at the players around. None of the players went absolutely crazy, but I tried to explain to Jack that Son's been sent off for some of those where you're like, well, he's not that kind of player and he's not stamped out. But if you go in like that, whether you make contact with the ball or not, and you go over the top of it, he's lucky the ball kind of took the impact away, really. Otherwise, he would have gone straight in with studs. The thing that was hilarious for me is I've seen loads of people talk about Neville and the commentary. Obviously, we're in the ground, we don't see that. Is that they showed it once they changed it from VAR to red. They showed it on the big screen, and you hear everybody kind of groan. But it's not to say they lost the game because of that sending off. Liverpool played quite well, I thought, with 10 players. They played very well with 9 players, but we kind of kicked on from that, and it obviously did give us a little bit more space in midfield. The goal where Maddison passes to Richarlison is just sublime, and watching that back. And again, Sonny scores a goal that we've seen him already score so many times this season, but it just looks so crisp and so fast. But it's kind of almost built from the back. It's that kind of press. It's all in stages, and it's just so lovely to see.
Yeah, we're gonna let's go ahead, since you brought it up. Let's go ahead and move into Isaiah. Let's move into the Curtis being sent off. So I'll set the stage a little bit. So I'm driving back from my own game. I left at halftime because I'm leaving not just to come back to watch, but I have a niece who's getting married that afternoon. So I'm coming back from my own game, and I'm listening to what is essentially a satellite radio. It's got a broadcast coming from the UK, and I heard the challenge, and they're like, they talked about it and they weren't all that, impressed with it. Then they saw the replay, and both were like, oh, that's an ankle breaker. That is an automatic red. I mean, that is a red all day long. So that was my kind of, so when I got home, I didn't know that there's any real controversy. So Isaiah, your thoughts on the decision initially given as a yellow, and then the sequence from there that turns it into a red.
When I saw it live, I said, I couldn't tell how much contact there was with Bissouma. But I was up in the mountains with my friend Ben, and I turned to him and I said, I was like, if he makes any contact with the studs on Bissouma, he's got to be sent off. He's coming with the studs up, and they've made it very clear. It's not a new rule. Made it very clear, like Becky said, if you lead with the studs and come over the ball, it doesn't matter why you come over the ball. Intent doesn't matter. They've been very clear and consistent with that. Casemiro had one earlier this season, an identical challenge he sent off for, and there's not even half the complaints about that red card that there has been for this one. I mean, I think it's absolutely absurd from Gary Neville, from Cara, from anyone else to challenge that's a red card. I don't understand where the argument comes from. You can say that you don't like that's the rule. Fine. You're not a fan of maybe you think that the rule should factor in that the ball rolled his foot over it as opposed to his foot rolling over the ball, but that's not part of the rule. So it's just crazy to me that's even being considered a controversial decision. And I think it is a dangerous challenge. I mean, when you come with the studs up with a stamping motion like that, he's not trying to hurt anybody. It's just that's a dangerous way to challenge for the ball. And when you make contact, it's going to be a red.
Yeah, and what infuriated me. So I listened to we have here in America satellite radio. We've got shows that go on all morning, and without question, everyone who was on the show was just saying what a terrible decision it was to send him off. And over and over and over again, it kept coming back to the word intent. And I'm mystified by this concept of intent, because again, you've articulated it correctly. It's not part of the rule. And I promise everyone, every Liverpool fan who is not watching the show, I promise you that it's absolutely, you don't want referees deciding whether somebody meant it. I mean, that will never work. You can't get in people's heads. You have to have, I mean, we have so few clear standards, so few, unambiguous decisions to be made in this game. You don't want to add more. And so, to the point of, you came over the top of the ball, like you said, doesn't matter why. You made contact above the ankle, doesn't matter why. The force of which, some are harder than others, but it's literally, by the rule, it's a red card. And it just boggles my mind why this has become such a talking point. I mean, we'll get to the disallowed goal in a second, but just on this red card, I mean, I think it's absolutely a mystery to me why everyone has all of a sudden decided that the intent of the player is now the important part, when that can't be judged in any fashion whatsoever. So I don't know I think that it's just very frustrating that that the talking point is about whether he meant to do it or not.
Yeah.
So Curtis is sent off, and they're down to 10 men. Becky, you say, of course, that's not a problem for Liverpool. I mean, they've won 2 games this season already with 10 men, and I agree with you. They made a slight tactical change, and now they put Salah at the top of the formation, which is certainly, would you rather him on the right or down the middle? And I don't know if I want him down the middle, quite frankly. So I think that they're just as dangerous. And then, of course, comes to the real unfortunate thing as far as the sport is concerned. We get the disallowed goal for Luis Diaz. How did that play out for you in the stands?
It seemed to happen very quickly. Watching it back, it's Udogie, I think, he loses it, doesn't it? And then Van der Ven, like I said, Van der Ven I thought played really well, but he was turned and it kind of came across, didn't it? And then I thought he took it quite well, but it was a very quick decision, and offside was given. And people were saying about Liverpool celebrated for a really long time. They did seem to celebrate for quite a long time, because when you're there and goals are given offside, you do tend to watch what the players do and their reaction. But they did celebrate for a long time, and then the flag went up. But it was weird. I think I said in the past that it didn't feel like they would put the VAR up this year, but they have. This game they did. It put going to VAR to see whether it's offside. They seem to. I know I've talked before on this show that the VAR seemed to take an inordinate amount of time. It did feel a very quick decision this time, which I know we're saying we want decisions to be made quickly, but it looks like they made the decision too quickly and got it wrong. But from a supporter in the stadium, when you don't really know what's going on, if they don't tell you it's gone to VAR and it takes forever, you just don't know what's going on. But we did know it was going to VAR, and it was very quick. It was another one of those like, oh, okay, if that's what's happened, I couldn't tell from where we are. I went at halftime to see some friends, and they're a bit further around in 249. They were like, yeah, it was definitely offside. You could see it looked offside live. I was like, oh, okay, oopsie. And then by then everyone's tweeting it and sort of sharing it, and you're looking at it. And then that's when I messaged my husband and I said, oh, how offside was the offside? And he went, yeah, it wasn't. So we got away with one. We could have a whole show just on the amount of situations where this has happened, not just to Tottenham, but just clubs all up and down the country. Even having the sendings off is a separate issue. We've had decisions that have not gone our way so many times. People are saying to me today, oh, it's corrupt and we cheated, and we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't actually do anything wrong. This is this whole kind of thing that we're supposed to have brought this on.
Wait. No, that's not. I don't know that you can say that, because we here in the cheese room, we have exclusive footage from inside the VAR booth. So I don't know that you can say that we didn't do anything wrong, because this is clearly evidence of tampering, of corruption. That's all I got to say. I mean, I hate to rain on the Tottenham parade here, but that's clearly, I mean, I don't know what else can you say? I mean, this is clear. I mean, this justifies the replay alone, doesn't it? I mean, come on. I mean, he shouldn't be in there. I I mean, again, from my perspective, I'm actually driving, listening to this, and so the goal scored, and they're talking about what a phenomenal finish that it was, and it was a phenomenal finish. Still, would look good in a Tottenham blue. Anyway,
but like I said, this idea that we've seen that we're supposed to have cheated, and someone said today that if VAR hadn't been a thing, the goal wouldn't have been given because the line's been flagged. So these things do happen. I was saying to Dave, when I remember last year in the FA Cup when it was at home at Anfield and Wolves, wasn't it? And they said the VAR had broken that day. So and that's just the ones you can remember. Loads of people could put in the chat about times where there's been dodgy offsides. I can remember Kane's had some disallowed for like shoulders and fingernails and a foot that's supposed to be wearing whatever. We could go on forever and ever, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is some law change after this point, because that seems to happen to Spurs quite a lot. We've had like the Sissoko handball and it's changed to sleeve, and then we had the Dyer one when he was pushed at Newcastle, and so it often seems to happen to Spurs, and then the rule changes afterwards. But it is what it is. If we didn't have VAR, it would have been given. It would have been offside. So I go with that really.
Well, I think it's just also a good time to mention all the other horrific times that Liverpool has been clearly singled out for unfair treatment. I think we can all remember these horrible events that Liverpool just terrible unlucky events for Liverpool. There's no question about it. So I think that's obvious. So I'll tell you, when I was driving down listening to it, they were talking about what a great goal it was, and then they said, oh wait, he might have been offsides. He kind of looked offsides at real time, and then they got the replay back, and they're like, oh no, he's on. And then there's mass confusion as to, wait a minute, what they couldn't there. I don't see any lines, and there was just, you could hear the announcers searching for what's going on. Isaiah, you're watching it live, so what and we now know a lot more about what's going on. So talk to me about it.
Yeah, so I was watching with Ben, as I said, and he played football a lot, but he's never been an avid viewer, particularly the highest level. I mean, he'll watch our local clubs, but there's no like VAR offsides like that with the lines at this level. So I was sort of explaining to him how it works, and I'm like, eventually they'll put oh no, I guess they're not going to put lines up there at all. And he was like, he looked so onside. How is that still offside? And I said to him, I was like, well, they say the technology is never wrong. It must just be a bad camera angle, or the line of the grass is not cut as straight as we think it is, because the technology is not supposed to ever get it wrong. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so we now know that Darren England thought that the goal was given, and said check complete, and then only realized his mistake once Spurs had played the ball, and at that point you can't change the decision. I mean, for me, it's, and I know we'll get onto this, but for me, it's if you look at just the track record that Liverpool have with dealing with decisions that are terrible and go in their favor, that Jurgen Klopp has, in particular, the exact same offsides event I was mentioned earlier happened in their game against Wolves last season. The exact same thing. They weren't clear what the decision was on the pitch. They said the technology wasn't working, and then it was that they didn't know what the decision was on the pitch, and then it was a miscommunication between the officials, and they didn't release the audio. But Wolves didn't ask for a replay. Wolves manager complained as normal in a press conference, and then moved on like a normal person. And so for me, it's a huge and embarrassing mistake for VAR, and Darren England shouldn't be in a VAR booth at this level for a long time, if ever again. But for me, there were a number of decisions in that game that were really poor that went their way, including the free kick that led to the goal that actually did count, that got Udogie booked. And it's a really good tackle. There's really not much contact with the player at all, and he's booked, and they end up scoring on the resulting play from the free kick. So For me, you get a decision that's wrong in your favor, you get one against you, and they've just turned it into this whole national conspiracy. The team that had the best VAR coefficient in the league last season with United.
Here you go.
Yeah, exactly. This. They would have been in the mud without VAR last season. And for them to be complaining like there's some conspiracy against them because they've had a few decisions this season, basically one decision this season that was actually wrong. They're bringing up, they think the challenge by Van de Ven where he comes and plays the ball away from I think it's Joe Gomez in the penalty area. They wanted a penalty for that all of a sudden. I mean, they just found the most just reading Twitter, just the craziest things to complain about. It seems like a fan base and a team and a manager who are not used to having anything not go their way, who are not used to the bad decision not being in their favor, and they just can't believe it. They can't cope with it, and they think they're somehow entitled to a replay because, of course, throughout history, every bad decision that's ever happened in a game has led to a replay where, and somehow we've got Arsenal fans telling us that, that Spurs, if we wanted to show some integrity, would agree to the replay. It's absurd.
Behind closed doors as well. There's replay. It should be replayed behind closed doors so we lose any advantage. So I replied to that going, well, they have to start the game with 9 men then, because otherwise it's not the same, is it? Yeah. It's ridiculous. It's never going to happen. They may change things from this point onwards. It's weird because in my head, I've got this vision of the VAR room where it should be like buttons, goal, no goal, like goal, no goal. So to hear him saying check over, and I think it's Jackie Oatley, who works for Radio 5. She's tweeted today to say, no, we don't just hear it once. We actually hear it repeatedly in our ears. And so it isn't just a case of he went check complete. There would have been like a conversation, which is why it's interesting to see whether they will release the audio that Liverpool have requested. Because if it just to sound them all like going and sounding like complete clowns, then it's not going to be great, is it, to release that? I think people have put in the chat, you just have to kind of move on. But, I can remember when we played Brighton and we had a couple of decisions, didn't we? Go, Matoma's was disallowed because it kind of caught him here and they said that was handball. So that's the one game I remember at home where we actually did have some decisions go our way that you're thinking, crikey, that was
stole that one.
But but usually we get absolutely none. So, like you said, I completely agree. It's almost like they're not used to it, and they're called Liverpool for a reason.
Right. So, and I think the point about this VAR decision on the offsides is, I mean, you brought up something. Both of you talked about this, where rules get changed. I think the fact that obviously Darren England wasn't paying attention to and has no business. I agree that's an atrocious dereliction of duty to not even understand what the call on the field is before you decide what your next step is. I mean, that's just an atrocious administrative error. But this issue of you can't correct it once the ball's put in play. I understand the rationale, but let's talk about a little mistake versus a big mistake. A little mistake would have said, "Oh, wait a minute," realizing that they had restarted from a not a center, not after a goal, but they're taking a free kick. That should have tuned them into, wait a minute, it's not a goal. And then
like you said,
go down and say,
they should just have been able to go, if that was the case, just go back to the referee and go, what was the original decision? He'll go, it was given offside. Oh, okay, it's not offside. This whole kind of check complete thing. Actually speak real words and say, no, he was not offside.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, maybe the atmosphere was so amazing they actually couldn't hear each other. So if that's the case, we need the atmosphere to continue to be amazing, because it means the officials can't understand each other.
Yeah, maybe so. But I mean, again, I am appalled at the behavior. I will say, okay, listening this morning to a radio broadcast here on satellite radio that involves Rodney Marsh, and Becky, you can tell me, is Rodney Marsh a known quantity? Is a 2 generation ago city striker?
Yeah. He used to be on Soccer AM, Soccer Saturday when it first started. He was like one of the first panel.
Okay. All right. So he actually, now I granted his job is to get people to call into the show and all that stuff, but he actually was soliciting Spurs fans this morning with the notion of how proud would you be if your chairman stood up and said, you know what, that was unfair. I volunteer a replay. He actually said those words on air, and I almost drove into oncoming traffic.
I had some kids come up to me today because obviously I said to a lot of them, they've got used to me knowing that I go to the most of the games. So now they don't even ask me before. I saw a few of them today and they went, he was only like 7 and he went, you were very lucky and it shouldn't have counted. I went, okay, we'll swap you. You have the 3 points from Saturday and we'll have the Champions League final back. And he looked at me and went, oh, no, that's not what I meant. So I was like, there you go, end of conversation.
Exactly. So I think this is good. I mean, on this topic, I thought that I selected out some phrases to make Klopp not look like a total arse. So here are some interesting quotes that came from the post game on the decision. So Klopp on the offsides. Nobody expects 100% correct decisions on the field, but we all thought when VAR comes in that it would make things easier. I think if you just take that statement, that actually is a reasonable statement to be made. And I think the next statement that, again, that's not a conversation with the two of them, but I'm saying the biggest problems that we have is that people fail to grasp that no form of technology is going to make the game errorless. We used to understand that error is part of the game, including officiating errors. I think those two are both very correct and true statements. With your case of VAR, the World Cup experimented with an automated system, right? So we take the human being in the same way that no one complains about goal line technology, right? And I don't know that, I think there maybe has been one failure from that technology. I mean, but as far as I understand, I don't think anyone disputes that Hawkeye or whatever it's called, his ability to, they do it in tennis well, they do it on the goal line. If you can implement an offsides regime that is similar, where it's not up to where you draw the lines and where you freeze it, if you can put that technology in place, which I know nothing about, so I don't know what's involved about doing that, I would absolutely be in favor on that. So I don't think the idea that VAR should make it better is a unreasonable thing, and there's no excuse for missing that call. But to everyone's point, how many teams can stand up and say we got hosed by dodgy lines or an angle that wasn't right or shoelace that was out of place or whatever? I mean,
they stopped it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just insane that we're going to create a national crisis over this. So anyway,
the thing that hearing back afterwards, because obviously I'm in the ground and then I'm driving home and we would like watch match of the day, and then Lineker was like, there are lines, by the way, we put those lines in, and you're like, okay. So obviously something's gone amiss, whether they didn't put the lines in or whatever. But I think it was maybe Alan Shearer made the point on Match of the Day, is that there's two of them in there. If one of them makes a mistake, isn't it the whole point of the other one to kind of prod him and go, no, you've made a mistake there? What is the point of having two of them in there if one of them doesn't make a mistake and the other one doesn't? Someone's just put in the chat there about maybe they didn't. We're having this idea that we have this in cricket, don't we? If it's a really close call and things like that, you go on with the on-field decision. And if that is a conscious decision that they want to use the on-field decisions more, then that's a fair comment to come out with. Stop blaming the technology. It's supposed to be clear and obvious errors that they're supposed to rectify. The problem is it was a clear and obvious error and they didn't rectify it. If it makes sense. Some of them, like you just said, some of them, it's. I think the word factual keeps getting mentioned over the last couple of days. And obviously I've said, people know who've watched the show. My eldest, he's a referee, and it's interesting. You sort of watch games through a referee's kind of point when you're kind of trying to sort of see from their point of view, is that you want to give the referees more kind of control of the way things are, but then they've brought VAR in those situations to stop that from happening. But there are not really things that are factual, except for things like goals going over the goal line and offsides. Whether someone has been pushed in the back or, like going back to the Basuma thing, whether, the studs were up and that sort of thing, you could argue there's a little bit of kind of, it's whether the human interprets what's happened. But when you've got offsides and physical balls being in certain places, that's the bit that is supposed to work. I like the way Ange said that, nothing, it's human error involved. You're never going to get perfect. And I saw someone tweet today to say that if everything was perfect, Matip wouldn't have scored the own goal. It would have come off skip and it would, So this is what makes football so good, because it is the situation where you're in the moment, the emotion and everything. It's just so, it's on a knife edge. But to kind of, from Liverpool's point of view, they get the decision wrong. That's what the VAR is to do, to change. However, it's not going to change anything. I'm reading all the comments. Loads of people are saying it'll be somebody else next week that gets it wrong, or there'll be somebody else, somebody else's decision. What we don't want is that Liverpool to be like this, so that, I was saying to somebody in the ground, it's a bit like the old days with Fergie at United. They're putting pressure on people to sort of feel that they're oh, Liverpool are playing, we better not do this, that, and the other. And I always remember that, all the amount of Fergie time that United used to get. It's because he used to say this stuff in press conferences, didn't he? And he used to never stop going on. But what's really lovely is you've got Ange, who's just very sort of calm about it. He's like, yeah, these things happen. It's not ideal that it's going to happen to other teams. You just want to make sure that kind of, Liverpool are coming out and saying about the integrity of the sport and things like that. To be fair to Klopp, when I listened to him on Saturday night, before he seemed to he's got riled since, but at the time you said he was very fair. I thought he was actually quite fair. He was like, we need an actual conversation about VAR. You need people to sit down and talk about it, and not just when people are emotional and angry and shouting at no. And he said something like, no one intends to do it wrong, and he's right. But there is going to be. I've said this on the show before. You seem to have a weekend where there's a lot of VAR, and then the following weekend you have like none, and then it kind of it's almost like it just sort of it does go like that. There's times where it's like there aren't these controversies, and then there's weekends where there are. But would we go back? I must admit, for me, I would do away with it completely. Goal line technology, brilliant. The thing on the watch, has it gone over the line? Great. Because interestingly, I watched Spurs women yesterday, and when Chelsea scored the first one, the ball had actually gone in before they actually scored. But aside from that, we don't need VAR. Go back to the way it was. It's part of the game. I've seen so many tweets of the ball when it went over at United, when it went over. Do you remember when that was given and it wasn't given and it was miles over the line? We could go on and on and on and on and on. There isn't going to be one size that fits every single club. It's just over the season, you would hope that they balance themselves out.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think that the technology isn't the issue. The human beings operating it are an issue. Yeah. And if they can't, and I've always said, I've always questioned in my mind, seeing how poorly the Premier League and the officials have implemented VAR over these many years, however long it's been. I've always secretly wondered, are they deliberately undermining it so that fans like Becky and other people saying, you know what, it was better before, screw it. Yeah. We will live with imperfect. And to your point, you said this earlier, Vicky, if we remove VAR from that game, Curtis stays on the pitch and there's no goal, it's 11v11 probably. I don't know, but you don't know how it all plays out, but it's a different game. VAR changed the outcome significantly, but it doesn't necessarily would have changed the result. But it definitely, I don't know if there not. I know there's a growing group of people who would like to get rid of it. I'm not necessarily there. I still seem to think that there should be some in the areas where that is somewhat two-dimensional. In other words, are you on or are you off? Once you clarify the definition of that, again, which has changed over my lifetime, because at one point it was, even was off when I started playing very early, and then even became on to help get more people into scoring positions. You could change things like that. I still would say that if you could automate it at least in the Premier League, where you have the technology and the money and the resources to put that system in place that takes the human being out of it, maybe give that a try. But needless to say, I think we've beaten that one to death. So we get to the goal. You mentioned someone earlier, and it's this man. And even though I would say, from my perspective, he had not his best game. He clearly was not 100%. His shots on his right foot clearly showed he might be suffering a little bit on the knee, but yet still 20 penalty area entries, a record in the Premier League this season, is tremendous. And as you said, that goal that was let up was actually, you were right. That ball started in the back, came inside, and to Madison was kicked back out. And then Udogie comes into midfield. Van de Ven goes out far left, receives the ball, brings it back into Madison, and founds in that little pocket of space around that press, and then delivers what is probably maybe, again, if Kevin De Bruyne makes that pass, it is just on loop on Sky and talk. The people just can't stop talking about what a genius legitimately he is, that Kevin De Bruyne is. Madison makes it because I think he's in a Spurs shirt. Whatever. Kind of. Now, granted, the game has been over analyzed from the mistakes, not the actual play. But that was, again, listening to it on the radio, because I'm still in the car at this point. just the gushing of the radio broadcast announcers about what a beautiful team goal was. I couldn't wait to get home and see it. So Isaiah, you were watching, so and I'll go to then finish with Becky, who was actually there. What did you see, and what did you like the most about that goal?
Yeah, I was still sort of discussing the situation with the offsides with Ben, and I was, and then sort of thinking about, and he was saying how, Spurs have to win the game now. There's no way you can, you just have to make sure you win the game once you're a man down. And I didn't know. I have some more details on that concept now, but at the time I was like, well, actually, I mean, particularly against Liverpool, but really anybody, if they're just gonna, if the sending off means there's 3 extra defenders to get around, it actually isn't easier. And as I'm in the middle of sort of going through that whole thing, they score. And I was like, okay, well, that makes it easier. And I did think it was going to, because then Liverpool have to come out. But to their credit, they did that well. Yeah, I mean, so watching the replay, because I probably missed a few of the passes live, giving my little explanation. To me, it was just like it was just a flash of the next step for the team. The ball movement was just a flash of like where Ange wants the team to get to next in terms of the quality of passing, because it was so quick, it was so well coordinated. Nobody was a half step behind. Everyone was right where they needed to be, right when they needed to be there. The quality of passes were there. And the quality of the assist and was excellent, and Son in the right place. It really looks like that's a video that Ange will have, like, this is what I want to see every game, no matter how deep the other team's defending, no matter who we're playing against, no matter what kind of quality they have. This is what I want to see every game, because this will score on everyone. And for me, that those moments are a much bigger takeaway for me than any of this crap about the decisions, because it just shows there is that next gear for us to get into, and probably another one beyond that to get into before this season's even over. And I think that goal is a really exciting glimpse into those next few gears.
Becky, your view from the stadium?
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, the kind of the way that Udogie got it back and Van der Ven, and they're kind of the breaking up of the play, and then Maddison. And I think Richarlison needs a lot of credit, because it was like a first time kind of like outside of the boot flick thing, and Son's there. It just looked so amazing. Yeah, it was lovely. It was really kind of quick, fast into playing. So obviously, particularly when Liverpool go down to 9 men, even though they've got less players, it definitely felt more compact, and it was a lot harder for them to kind of make those kind of passes. So yeah, it was lovely to see. And I think, like you said, I think Green, Maddison, I think we'll kind of come on to it later, but in terms of the substitutions that they made, you could tell that the intensity dropped. We're kind of going back to players that were more sort of playing last season, and you could really see that they were really, really struggling, which I think we were lucky to win, in the sense that there was just this kind of repeated sort of getting it to Kulusevski or getting it to Solomon, and it was kind of like them being passed to Romero. Romero felt like he spent the whole second half in the 18-yard box, but it was then going back to Kulusevski, and then it was going to Romero again, and Maddison had gone off by this point, and then it's going, and it was just like, oh crikey, everyone's around me going, just get it in the mixer. And then the one time they did, Matip was on the end of it. But yeah, going back to before all of that, when we had Maddison and Son playing and Richarlison on the left, I think yeah, it was great. It was just a shame that they equalised. And I think even if you think about after they equalised, they nearly scored again as well. If he'd kind of, Diaz had kind of connected with Salah's cross, like I said, I went to see my friends at halftime and was like, I was really annoyed they'd equalised, because as I said, I thought it was our best by opportunity by miles to beat them. It's been such a long time since we beat them. We haven't beaten them in the new stadium. We haven't beaten them since Wembley at home. And to kind of, it felt like this was the best opportunity. And then they actually nearly went in 2-1 up. We did ride our luck a little bit. And I think Ange said that in his press conference afterwards, didn't he? Saying that he didn't think we played that well in the first half. Right. But he was pleased with how they played second half.
I think actually I'm not positive, but I don't think the Cheese Room has done a podcast or a YouTube show ever that was talking about a victory over Liverpool. However fortunate the bounces, the rub of the green or whatever.
They're the last team for us to beat at the new stadium, so we've now beaten everybody at the new stadium.
I didn't. Thank you. I didn't realize that. And so Jeff earlier threw this in, but I didn't. It was too soon in our discussion. Thank you, Jeff, for the super chat. Really appreciate the support to the show. And you mentioned Sonny, who had an unbelievably good finish again, is now only 2 goals behind, who will probably win the Golden Boot, I guess, in that bloke who plays up at City. But he's off to a fantastic,
He's a robot, not a bloke. He's not a man.
Oh, okay. So in the human Golden Boot race, Sonny is up at 6 goals. But Jeff asked, because it looked like when I saw the replays that he looked a little looked a little wonky kind of coming out of that, because again, similar, not exactly like the Arsenal goal, but he was in a lot of traffic, having to get on the end of that a little bit. And there's a lot of things going on, and he came up and coming out. We'll talk about the subs that came in, but him coming out, from everything I can understand from what I've read of the post match, is that Ange said he was never planning on going 90, that there was a question as to, like you were saying, Isaiah, you were afraid he wasn't even going to be in the starting lineup, that the plan was for him to go around an hour, and that he's really just trying to keep Maddison and Sonny as healthy as possible, because they're both carrying pretty serious knocks. So that was the reason for the substitution. And it also showed how much we stepped down. Again, the idea of a paper-thin squad is true. I am agreeing with you, Becky, about how it's great to see Donnelly, it's great to see Valise. I hope maybe even see, Hill Messi get in the squad and get some minutes. But those 3 players, as good as they might be, are no Perisic, who could have been wonderfully useful in this game. Absolutely,
particularly when Richarlison went up front as well, because that's all it needed. It needed those crosses from him that weren't coming in.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's such a huge miss, and that's going to be a big problem for us that you can't do anything about, and certainly not until January. But I still think that the idea, and maybe you suggested it, Isaiah, or somebody else is talking about it on the pod. Are we ever going to see, a left footer on the left in Decky and a right footer on the right in Solomon? Are we going to try and encourage more going down the line and crossing back? But needless to say, but Jeff, thanks for the super chat. And so the goal, we already kind of covered this. I don't think we need to go into too much about their goal. It was clear, like you said, Isaiah, it was clearly Udogie wins the ball. Shouldn't have been called a foul. Certainly shouldn't have been given a yellow card. And while the free kick doesn't lead directly, it basically is the only reason Van Dijk is still down at that end of the pitch, because he was there for the free kick. What do you think, Becky? Do you feel that Romero and/or Van de Ven could have done better in that sequence?
Yeah, and you said then about Van Dijk. Sorry, we've had that, haven't we? I remember saying it in the Arsenal game. I think it was Jesus. Somebody came around the back, didn't they, and headed it, and again it was the same sort of thing. Jack said to me straight away, Gakpo's injured himself. He's injured himself the way he's kind of turned, and he just, it was a nice finish. Maybe they could have got tighter to him. They definitely switched off. I think they'd admit that they switched off, didn't they? And then he injures himself, which ironically he then goes off at halftime, which is the reason Jota's on the pitch. Jota comes on at halftime, and then he had an eventful kind of 20 minutes or whatever it was. But yeah, like I said, I was just disappointed that we seemed to kind of contain them for what we needed. Their counter attack, we'd see but it was clear that their thing was going over the top that they were going to run onto. Which, like I said, when Van de Ven, had those kind of times where he did chase them down, it was great. It was just like you said, all of everything you said, that it shouldn't have been a foul, so therefore they shouldn't have been up there, and it shouldn't happen. But they did switch off, and Ange keeps saying we're going to have these situations where we play these high presses, and there are going to be bumps in the road, as he refers to it. I think they said on commentary, and I watched it back yesterday, they were saying the back four has continued the same despite them not having a clean sheet for however many games.
Yeah.
Which would have been the United game, but we did think this season we were going to win every game 4-3. It's getting close to it. We've still scored more than 2 every game as well, or 2 or more every game as well this season, which is brilliant. Yeah.
Isaiah, what are your thoughts on that, on the goal, as far as how the defenders played that?
Yeah, I mean, we've covered the officiating on the goal, but for me, the biggest issue, because you're going to get free kicks given against you every game that are wrong. And you're going to get into situations where you're stretched a bit thin because of that, or all the center backs are forward. That's going to happen every game. And the biggest issue on the goal for me, I've seen people talking about Van de Ven. Should he be able to put a challenge in? Should he be able to get a block in? Gakpo's a fantastic attacker. He's got a lot of skill, and he actually turns so aggressively he injures himself in the process. So I'm not going to blame Mickey too much for that. Maybe if he were older and a bit more experienced, I'd be a little harsher on him. As far as Romero goes, he drops out of the defensive line and plays their entire attack onside on the ball from the Hungarian midfielder whose name I can't say. Yeah, that. There's a clear defensive line, and everyone's holding it. And then Romero goes with his man, and they all come on side. So the defense doesn't go with them to play them offside, because they know, number one, the height differential is not in Spurs' favor, and two, they've got 3 or 4 big guys up there, and really the only kind of big bodies on our like actual really tall guys on our team are Mickey and Romero. And even Romero's not all that big. Richarlison's not all that big. So they're trying to play that high line, and it's Romero who plays them all onside, and that's what really frustrated me is you need Romero to kind of be the leader of that defense, and I know that's difficult for him. That's difficult to ask of a player that is still young himself, but he is the oldest guy across that back line, and he does need to be leading that defense, and to have him sort of he's very reactionary in the way he plays. He reacts to things, and he acts on his first impulse, and that's part of what makes him so good. But he needs to get tighter in some of he needs to tighten up in some of those moments, and hold that defensive line. Don't swing a leg at the ball in the penalty area when a shot's coming in, or if you do, use the right foot or use your left foot, the correct one, to play it away. Don't just go off that first impulse. And it's a crazy thing to get upset with him over, because you're asking a guy to use a half of a second to make the right decision every time.
Mm-hmm.
But at this level, the leader of your defense, vice captain, because of how good he's been, World Cup winner, that's the sort of level he's at, that now we're having to be, we can be critical of him for those things, because there is a certain expectation for him, and he'll have that expectation for himself. He'll know that he switched off, dropped in too deep, and cost that goal. So that for me is the main talking point. Is Romero needs to keep his head and stay in line with his defense.
So we got 126 people watching. We got 48 likes. Here the panel is working hard. We're a man down here. I just want everyone to know we're a man down. We're playing a man short here, because our esteemed colleague James is unable to make it at the last minute, and so we need everyone to smash that like button. We need your support, so please, if you're watching and enjoying the show, please give us a like. It really helps us out a lot. So yeah, we get to the second half, and obviously starting out in a 1-1 game, and so I don't feel the need to spend a lot of time on, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't have a lot to say about Jota getting sent off, because again, I just want to refresh this once again in the upper right panel. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to, because that number 20 gets the winning goal in that game. I don't want to hear about it.
Yep.
So just save it, please. He got 2 yellow cards in 90 seconds. He should be smarter. He left his team out to fend with 9. It's his fault. It happens all the time in games. Soft yellows. Look, you want to talk about the soft yellows? That's a league-wide problem, in my opinion. Right? They are handing them out like candy, yet they're not increasing the suspension. Now, we're going to lose Basuma for a game very soon. We're going to lose players that we can't afford to lose, because they just hand out these cards like they're candy, and it's just ridiculous. It is absolutely going out of control. There were 9 yellow cards given, 5 on Spurs, 2 red cards in what I would say is, well, a competitive, not a very violent game, right?
No, I mean,
one thing I would say about Jota is he probably got booked for the first one that he shouldn't have got booked, but he should have got booked for one earlier on I know you're saying he got booked twice in 90 seconds, but there was one earlier on that he didn't get booked for. So it was a kind of one of them situations where you have it with refs and they're like I said, I keep looking at through Charlie, is that his idea that, yeah, well, I let you off the last one, you're not having this one. It was a kind of that. The second one, he's just ridiculous. He shouldn't be doing that. Udogie was all over him. All the few, from half time when he was on, he couldn't keep up with Udogie. He just couldn't. He was too physical for him. He couldn't get near him. And the second one, to kick out like that when you're on a yellow is ridiculous. And I don't think anyone should have any complaints about that booking. So if we're going back, they're going to, because Liverpool have appealed the Curtis Jones one. Say that gets, I don't know, down to a one match or gets rescinded or whatever. They can't. I know they're not legally allowed to apply for the one back for Jota because it was two bookings, but the game would still have been 10 against 11 because he was always going to get sent off. They were two stupid, reckless, silly tackles to make when, from Liverpool's point of view, they were arguably playing a little bit better with 10 players. They'd had the goal. They then had the chance afterwards. As soon as it went down to 9 men, they had zero chances for the rest of the game. There was a few sort of balls over the top, but that was it. And he did let his team down in that situation where they probably could have got more out of it. You notice certainly that Liverpool slowed things down a lot more after he got sent off, understandably so. So right, what you're saying. I think he has done his team there really, and that's where you do sort of feel for Matip really, because Jota's the one who's let him down a bit there.
Yeah, and I will also say, I want to tip my hat to Liverpool. I mean, again, I have no love for Liverpool whatsoever, and I think their post-match behavior has been, ridiculous, including I forgot this. Let me find it for us all. Yeah, here we go. This was wonderful. I mean, I'm sure most everyone who's been watching has seen this. If you haven't, this is just. I would love to know what the private messages are between two World Cup winning teams here, but this is really great. Isaiah, is this the translation is "cry at home"? Is that?
Yeah, it's "go cry at home" is what I've seen it translated to. I don't speak Spanish, but
yeah, okay.
I thought he was very quiet, McAllister. I said to Jack, it's the one game of the season I tend to know all of the opposing players because obviously Liverpool kind of know about them, but I really thought he was really quiet. He wasn't. If you're comparing it to Maddison and how influential Maddison was, I really thought McAllister barely did anything.
Yeah, and this comment is, I actually meant to mention this. That's what I had been told somewhere. I was listening to, I think it was on the radio this morning, that really it was an accumulation. You can't say any one particular call was egregious, but it was. He came on and just started hacking people basically, and he let his team down. Sorry. Yeah. And so we had two fantastic opportunities to save. I mean, Matters hits a left-footed curler to the post that beats, I think, every goalkeeper possibly in the league other than Alisson. Maybe Ederson, maybe Vicario. I don't know. I mean, but there are very few goalkeepers in the world who get to that. And he bailed them out, as he often does. He was fantastic. Followed up by, I think, a tougher save than it was given credit on Sonny's volley. Because of the speed of the ball and the distance, that thing is rifling under the underbar, and he gets his both hands on the ball and pushes it over. I mean, I really thought at that point we were in the ascendancy, and the second goal was coming. I could feel it. What was your feeling there, Becky, as you were watching?
Yeah, we were right behind Maddison's one, and Jack Coulson sort of turned to me and said, "Oh, that's like Sonny. That's how Sonny used to score goals last season." We were right behind that, but I agree. Alisson was everywhere, and we wouldn't have been having a conversation about dodgy offsides if we'd kind of scored those two, because we would have run away with the game. And because it's tight and it's 2-1, it makes it more of a kind of talking point, doesn't it? But and then I agree, the Sonny one, it kind of really. I can remember one in the first half as well where it was between, was it Kulusevski and Richarlison, and it was all a bit tight, and then Richarlison hits the post.
Yeah, I did.
And there was that kind of interplay bit. Yeah. So it was very similar to that. It was very quick. There was this kind of interplay. It kind of came to him before he sort of realised he hit it over, and then it was straight at Alisson. But equally, it's almost like he could have done with shinning it or something, because then Alisson wouldn't have known where it was and how it would have gone in. But we were really kind of sort of turning the knife at that point, really, and really kind of Yeah, trying to kind of really go for it. It's like I said before, the substitutions, Son goes off before the Jota thing almost immediately. I think would Sonny have stayed on longer? But I think,
Yeah,
like
I
you
thought
said,
about that
I
too.
think it was almost straight after, wasn't it, that he got sent off? But he was injured. Interestingly, with the lovely celebrations that we've had 2 consecutive matches now, and apparently I read somewhere today it's the first team to do that in since 2016. I think it might have been 22. No, I think it was 2016. Had scored 2 winners like that at the end in consecutive games. But if we remember for Sheffield United, everybody ran down to the corner, including Vicario. This time, Vicario stays and puts his hands in the air, and then Sonny sort of jogs down. Sonny gets down there to celebrate, but he doesn't run at the same intensity as he did the Sheffield United one. So, he's clearly holding something. And he said in a post match, didn't he, that it's okay, I've got a week and I'll be okay. But, later on when we talk about Luton, it possibly could be something that we maybe do change up, or it obviously depends how the game goes, doesn't it?
Well, Isaiah, I was going to turn to you on Richarlison, because I think it's a good point, because the subs are coming in, we're changing formation a little bit. He moves into the middle and that sort of stuff. And we've got 2 comments from our viewers. One early in the show from Kevin said he thought Richie played well and caused them a lot of issues. And then we just had another one come in. I'm assuming this is coming directed at Richarlison, although he's unnamed. And I'm just going to, for sake of argument, I'm going to say it is. But let's just say, what did you think of Richarlison's performance in particular in the game or through the game, if you want to change how you answer that?
Well, on Richarlison, I think if anyone thought that his confidence, with the couple of, or with the goal, with the assist against Sheffield, if people thought his confidence was just going to snap back completely after that, when he says, okay, the off the pitch stuff is resolved, and he's having a bit of success on the pitch, he wasn't going to go, and all of a sudden he wasn't going to hit his absolute top form immediately. And I think what I'm seeing is him building on the positivity, the newfound positivity that he hasn't had since, probably his Champions League debut while at Spurs. That's probably the last time he's had that sort of positivity at Spurs. And I think that's
a long time ago.
Yeah, it really is. And I think he is going to be able to build on that and carry on this season. He isn't going to get us 20 Premier League goals. He probably isn't. He isn't going to get us 20 goals all competitions. But he might, between goals and assists, he might get up into those figures. And I think, as he builds on this, we're going to see exactly what we can get out of Richarlison. Exactly how good is he? Exactly how well does he fit this system? Because we're finally going to see something closer to the best version of him. And if it turns out that, he isn't perfectly suited for the system, which I don't think is the case, then I'm sure he'll be moved on. But I'm looking forward to seeing him build on this performance against Liverpool, continue to build on these recent performances, because he has been good. And I think being a guy who's, says his most comfortable position is through the middle, seeing Sonny really confidently claim that position, and then when he gets brought into the team, played on the left wing, he has no issues with it. He's happy to be on the pitch, and he puts together a really good performance. And that's encouraging, that it's not ideal circumstances for him, but he still came out, put a shift in, and it was a good shift as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And again, I look at it from the standpoint of he's got 2 assists and a goal, hit the post in the last match, and that's certainly at least an uptick in form. And if that could slowly continue to climb, and I think if we can find, if this team will start getting the ball down the line and cut back into the box with low crosses to give him something to get his body on, get his head on, get his whatever, I think we'll see a lot better. I applaud him for 2 assists that were part of intricate actual pattern of play, so he can do it. He's not incapable of it. So I'm encouraged, but I think the jury's way out on 60 million so far, and whether or not he's really going to be with the club long term. So I think we'll turn to the end here. Let's kind of just focus in a little bit on us at 9. At Liverpool at 9, which I think, I hate to give it credit, but as much as I dislike listening to him complain, Klopp still proves that he's an elite manager, because the tactical shifts and the things they did were causing us a lot of trouble. And I think that, obviously with Sonny out, I was really, really frustrated. I couldn't believe how many times we were trying to swing crosses in to players that have a huge height. I mean, you got 3 center backs towering over your players, and we keep swinging cross after cross after cross, as opposed to, I thought Solomon would come in and do a lot more in taking guys on, because if you're going to get through the packed in defense, going straight down the middle or swinging crosses, from the half spaces, it's just not going to make it. You've got to take guys on, make defenders have to shift. Once you beat a man, now someone's got to come out to meet you. So now the defense is in motion. I was very frustrated, but I thought later about it, say, okay, maybe it's that reality is that they've spent all their time just trying to learn the system, 11v11, playing out of the back and all the things that you want to see. And they probably haven't had a lot of time on the training pitch working on playing up a man or playing at packed defense. I mean, they've only really faced Sheffield, and we saw how much they struggled, which is something we'll turn to when we take a quick word about Luton. But how did
I think the thing about the players that came on, we brought Davis on, we brought Højbjerg, we brought Skip, we brought Solomon, and it just really showed that once you kind of take Maddison off, Sarr went off. I was thinking, just sitting there listening. We don't really seem to mention Sarr. Sarr is great as well. He's still so young and so new, and it's just a given. But once that kind of element of either the press or that kind of fitness level or that kind of intensity and that creativity is gone, it was back to Højbjerg and Skip, which I've got a lot of time for Skip, but he's not that creative player. And it was just, like I said earlier, sideways and backwards. And then Romero was getting involved, and then it was going across, and it's back again. And then Solomon, and it was like, oh my God, just get a cross in. And then, as it turns out, Kulusevski is kind of pulled inside, and Porro is the person who ends up putting the cross in, hits it really hard. And it felt like for about 20 minutes, there hadn't been any crosses that had been like that. Kulusevski, although I'm reading somewhere today about how he's done the most runs and he's done the most, all these things that he's done, and he's like second, I think, only to Maddison in the Premier League. He wasn't kind of driving crosses in, and then Solomon, when he came on, he wasn't doing it either. When Porro does, he just booms it in, which is what Perisic was doing on the other side. So it's great that we've got that in Porro, and that's where it kind of came from. But like I said earlier, equally he could have skied it, scuffed it, could have gone out for a goal kick. There's a limited chance that what ended up being a goal for us, but the one time we did put a cross in, we did actually benefit from it. It's just, like you said, it's kind of slightly worrying that when those players, whether they've got a knock or whether they're tired and whether they need to come off or whether they're suspended, we've got this situation where the team setup is very different. It's not as attacking, it's not the high press, and it's quite a bit harder to see games out that way.
It is, and as members, my son and I are both, Isaiah and I are members of the Pierre-Emile Højbjerg fan club. To be honest, I thought actually he was probably the most impactful sub, because I really felt like he helped move the ball much more quickly around, and he actually, I thought, brought us a little bit of something. I mean, he's no Maddison, of course, not even a shadow of it, but he really did, I think, up the tempo, which is what you've got to do when you've got 9 people behind the ball. And of course, the goal came from Romero doing the same thing, bypassing on a quick pass down to Porro. So I think that I'm hoping that this was going to be an opportunity for maybe some more time to work on pack defenses, because we got the game, we got the win, and that's great. Unfortunately, there was a little bit of sadness that I think should get a mention. That seems that Destiny got a lot of problems online, if I'm not mistaken. The club put out a statement. I think this is it. I was unaware of this. This was put in John Williams' wonderful producer of ours, put this in the deck, and I wasn't aware of this issue because I've been kind of wrapped up today. I don't know the details of this, but you guys can fill me in what happened here. Is this just online racial abuse from fans?
Yeah. Well, so-called fans, yeah. But interestingly, I think Valencia retweeted it about an hour later, saying, "We are with you, Destiny. There's no place for this in football." But I'm not while we've been on the show, but I haven't seen Liverpool put a statement out of similar to say that it's deplorable. They could put statements out about what they think, the integrity of sport and how the VAR played out, but they haven't put anything about the racist abuse he gets. I think we've got a great team around us, and Udogie will have a great team around him, and it'll be this idea that he's new and he's in this country. But yeah, the fact that hopefully they will find it'll be faceless people that don't have a picture on their account, but there should be ways of being able to find someone. I saw someone tweet earlier that you should be able to verify your accounts and all that sort of stuff now, because it is deplorable. But the fact that hopefully they will find the people. It was more than one person as well that have done it.
Yeah. Well, karmic justice will hopefully serve those individuals, and karmic justice has served us. I feel like we finally got a break against Liverpool that we've gotten so few of in the past, which leave us and that other North London club as the only undefeated squads left. And of course the table shows that basically basically a dead tie for second. I realize they're technically third, but for all potential purposes, this is very, very tight. Obviously, one of the reasons I think if I don't know if Man City had won, it would be quite the outpouring of support for Liverpool, because obviously anyone who doesn't want City to win, or maybe you're counting on Liverpool to do a title challenge, I don't know, but we are going to be facing this is the fixtures next weekend. So it is conceivable that obviously we play the early game. I think it's the first game of the weekend on Saturday. So with a win against Luton, we can go top. And we have a run. I don't have it up here, but we have a very on paper favorable run. We play Fulham, I think, after that, who was woeful, it seems, today, losing to Chelsea. City's got obviously at Arsenal, then Brighton, and then at United, and then of course City's game with Goons after that. They go at Chelsea, and then they got Sheffield. Liverpool's got at Brighton, Everton, and Forest. So I expect this table to stay very tight.
And really all of these as well these are all after Champions League and Europa League fixtures as well. So that Arsenal City one is after they've been in the Champions League, and then Liverpool are in Europa League.
They've got Leipzig. They've got Leipzig. That's no easy task to play Leipzig at all. So it is realistic that we, of course, lose every fixture that I just talked about. But it's also realistic that we could be right here in the same spot, or even top when you get through 10 games. So we've got, my question for you, Isaiah, is how we performed, the last 20 minutes of the game against a 9-man packed defense, a bad harbinger for the Luton away game. You have any? I haven't watched Luton. I literally don't think I've even seen them yet. Do you have any thoughts on, just as we wrap this up, any thoughts on the game this weekend?
Yeah, I think we're going to be dealing with nine defenders again, but with a couple of players ahead of them, maybe looking to get on the counterattack, and Carlton Morris and whoever else. And but I think an important thing to recognize is the 9 players we were up against for Liverpool are 9 really, really good players. And we're talking about excellent defenders. We're talking about, one of the best managers on the planet setting them up specifically to stop what we're trying to do. And now we're talking about Luton. Now we're talking about a team who still has a player from when they were in the 5th tier. And then that's not to be in any way critical of Luton.
It's a great story.
Yeah, it's a great story, and I'm excited for the journey they're on, and I think that's really cool. But from my perspective, it is a little bit worrying that we had a bit of difficulty moving the ball against Liverpool, but at the same time, we scored against their 9 defenders. However, fortunately, and I think, the quality that Luton have is obviously so far behind Liverpool that I would hope to see an easier ride for us. And I know it's on the road, and it's a big team visiting, and so the fans will be up for it and the players will be up for it. But if Chelsea, who can't, I guess they've scored twice today, but if Chelsea, who haven't really been able to score against anybody else, were able to score 3 against Luton, I just see with their disjointed system, all of their injuries and the players that they have, I see a real opportunity for us to sort of to rack up some goals. And I think, and you mentioned this to me, Dad, off the show, about now we have a week to prepare and to work on. Okay, this is clearly like the issue that we're going to run into is 9 defenders. How do we break them down? They can work on that all week, and Ange will have already started drawing up those plans for them, working on those patterns of play where he talks about varying our attack more. I think he'll have plenty of plans to make sure that happens. So I'm cautiously confident that because of the new attitude, the new system, and the mentality of the group right now, I'm cautiously confident that we'll have a comfortable 3 points there.
I think the only reason why people are slightly worried is that they beat Everton. So I got to the whole of the Liverpool game to half time, not knowing any of the scores prior to kickoff, apart from the Villa Brighton game. So I heard that in the car going down. I didn't know City had lost. I didn't know United had lost. Didn't know Luton had beaten Everton. And I think that's the only reason why people are slightly worried. It's a bit like going back to the manager of the month thing again. It's like, oh, we've had 2-3 decent results. Does that mean we are going to then drop to Luton? We should, like you said, I agree with what I said. We have got the quality that we should beat them. I think it's quite helpful that they've beaten Everton, because then Ange can say, now, look, this is the potential banana skin. This is what we need to do about it. So it's kind of almost like something he can use as a kind of preparation tool. They've got a match in the week against Burnley. That game when they couldn't play because of their ground.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've not got those things. We've got no Champions League, nothing before next Saturday's 12:30 game. We don't tend to particularly play brilliantly at the early games, but we don't, all those sort of old things have gone out the window this year. Everything's completely like a new slate. So yeah, I think I would like to think we've got enough to beat Luton. Again, Ange keeps saying again, we'll keep going until the 100th minute if necessary. But I think we've got enough to beat Luton. Yeah.
Do you think either Sonny or Madison will see the bench instead of starting to save them?
I think he tends to like to start with them, doesn't he, and then bring them off. Because like with Son and Madison coming both off, maybe Johnson is fit next week. When Felice came on Saturday, he is massive. He's a massive unit. Yeah, possibly, like you said, they could. I think it's more likely they'll start with them, and then because, like as we were talking before, Richarlison's played the whole game. When he was playing last season, he was playing on the left, then he was subbing for Sonny. Or Kane never ever came off, so he was never really playing for Kane. But now he's got options, so you'd think Richarlison will just move as opposed to come off.
Right.
That's what I would see, really.
Well, let's hope. I wouldn't be Spurs if I didn't actually worry more about this game than I did Liverpool. Almost, it's these are like you're saying, it's going to take a long time before I think any normal Spurs fan is going to be confident going into any fixture. I mean, maybe years. So let's hope that day actually comes where we're actually overconfident. So, all right. Well, we've been here together. I think we put in a good hour and almost 30 minutes. Again, I think we definitely showed well, did better than Liverpool down, players. I think we definitely came to the play today. So I really appreciate, Becky, you joining us and bringing the insights from the stadium. Isaiah, really thank you for helping and joining us here as well. And I would let everyone remind them, please, we got our Wednesday show coming up where we're going to get into the more of the details of the game and the controversy and then looking towards Luton. And of course, we'll have our Friday show as well that we'll get into even more details on Luton. And we also, if you haven't, make sure you know that we've got a good podcast going. That show dropped, I think, on Sunday. It's a good listen. Seven the Gang did a good podcast, so make sure you get over to our Facebook page and our Twitter. I will not say the other word. page as well to check those things out. And please, on your way out, hit the like button. And let's just remember, it's a new day. It's a new dawn. Come on, you Spurs.
Why Spurs?
Come on, you Spurs.
All right, we're going to get out.